Shalom everyone to Numerical Gems in the Torah. In the Torah portion of Chayei Sarah, Sarah Imenu, the first matriarch, passes away. And the first part of the portion describes how Avram buys the cave of Machpelah in Hebron in order to bury her there. And she and all the other patriarchs and matriarchs are buried there except for Rachel, who's buried near Beit Lechem. And in the many details that are given of how Avram buys this cave to bury Sarah, it mentions that he buys the cave for 400 pieces of silver. Now, anytime there's a number in the Torah, it's not there what's called stam, just for no reason. Numbers, of course, are very, very significant. So here, the Torah explicitly mentions that Avram buys the cave of Machpelah in order to bury Sarah for 400 pieces of silver. So what is the significance of this? So first of all, we're told this was the first purchase of Eretz Yisrael by Avraham. And so it represents Avram making what's called a kinyan, taking ownership really of not just Hebron and in this cave, but really all of Eretz Yisrael, because God had promised to give him all of Eretz Yisrael. So his first purchase represents or symbolizes his acquisition of all of Eretz Yisrael. And we see that in a statement by the sages where they ask, how big is Eretz Yisrael? And so they answer 400 parsang by 400 parsang. A parsang is an ancient measurement, like we have a kilometer or a mile. It's like that, 400 parsang by 400 parsang. So here we see that it's obviously connected to this idea of Avram coming to possess all of Eretz Yisrael through this original purchase of 400 pieces of silver. There's a famous story when right now the President Herzog is the president of Israel. But a while ago, his father was also president. But when the elder Herzog was president, first he was the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. And this is going back probably to the 70s. And there was some kind of disturbance in Hebron, and it made it all the way to the Security Council of the United Nations. And everyone's making their speeches, and as usual, Israel's being blamed for this, that, or the other thing. And there was basically a claim that why are there any Jews in Hebron at all? Like, what gives them any right to be in Hebron? And so Ambassador Herzog, who later became president, and as I said, his son is now president, he opened up a Bible, a Chumash, and he read this section from Parsha Chayei Sarah about Avram purchasing this part of Hebron. And he said, this is our deed to Hebron. This is our right to be in Hebron. This is 3,700 years ago. Quite literally thousands of years before there was Islam. And so this is a very, very powerful story. But where else does the number 400 come in? When Yaakov Avinu leaves Israel, because he had engineered with his mother's encouragement getting the blessing from Yitzchak. And Esav felt that it should have been his, and he wanted to kill Yaakov. So Yaakov, with Yitzchak's blessing, leaves Israel, and he also goes to find a wife. He's gone for 20 years. In those 20 years, so he marries Leah and Rachel and Zilpah and Bilhah, and now he has 11 sons and a daughter, and he's now ready, at God's command, to come back to Israel 20 years later. And as he's coming towards the land, he sends messengers to Esav, wanting to make peace with him. I'm coming back. Let's make peace. He sends him gifts, and the messengers come back and say, Esav is coming to meet you with 400 men. And the Torah mentions exactly 400 men. So here we have Eretz Yisrael is the dimensions of 400 by 400 parsangs that were symbolically purchased with 400 pieces of silver. And Esav is coming to prevent Yaakov from coming back into the land. So along with sending gifts, Yaakov prays and he prepares for war. And in his preparations for war, he splits his camp. And it says that night he crossed over Ma'avar Yabok, over the Yabok stream. And there he fought with a man until daylight. And he was able to defeat this man. And he then asked for a blessing. And he was blessed with the name Yisrael. We're actually going to speak at this at greater length in another episode of numerical values, numerical gems in the Torah. But here I just want to point out that the 400 men come to prevent him from coming into Eretz Yisrael. Of course, he does come back, and this number 400 comes up another time. And here is in the story of King David. This is even actually before he becomes officially king. He was anointed in secret by Shmuel, Samuel the prophet. And it says that 400 men gathered around David and became his core group. Later, David conquers the largest area of Eretz Yisrael in all of Jewish history. And it was those 400 men who symbolically become the core of his followers, his army, in order to conquer the land of Israel, which is 400 parsang by 400 parsang. We see this number 400 one other time in our mystical tradition, where we're told that there are 400 worlds of divine pleasure in the world to come. So why 400? It's seemingly a symbolic number. But that 400 has to do with the 400 pieces of silver through which Avram purchases the cave for Sarah. Because in Hebrew, the word for silver, 400 pieces of silver, is kesef. And in this phrase, 400 worlds of divine pleasure, is kisufim. Pleasure comes from the same root as kesef, as silver. And so we're told by tradition that the burial place of our patriarchs and matriarchs, and we're further told the reason that Avram wanted to bury Sarah there is he came to understand that that was the burial place of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. And so that's why sometimes Hebron is called Kiryat Arba, the city of four pairs. Avram and Sarah, Yitzhak and Rivka, Yaakov and Leah. But first of all, Adam and Chava, the four pairs that are buried there. And so we're told that Hebron is like the channel between this world and the world to come. Because the first Jew who dies is Sarah, and she is buried there. And through her death and her burial, and Avram's relating to her in this world, but also in the world to come, because we believe in the eternity of the soul. So Hebron represents the connection between this world and the world to come. And so in the world to come, there are 400 worlds of divine pleasure. But in this world, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is likened to 400 worlds of divine pleasure. And so everyone should be blessed eventually to make their home in Eretz Yisrael, where we can connect heaven and earth, this world and the world to come.